Journal entry number 0. The Introduction. May 7th, 2023. Hello, fellow scholars. My name is Buster, and I am writing this journal entry along with my colleague and dear friend Kaylee. We have been tasked to travel through the recently discovered portal to explore and catalog the fantastical flora and fauna we may encounter on the other side. We are both ecstatic to begin our mission, although slightly nervous about what we may find on the other side. Wish us luck. The journey of a lifetime begins tomorrow. Journal entry number 1. May 2nd, 2023. A few minutes ago, we walked through the shimmering portal, and we were perplexed. We left on a warm summer's day, and now we are engulfed in the darkest of nights. Apparently, the time of day in this world does not correspond to our own. The sky was a deep shade of blue, with 2 moons illuminating the land. As we gazed at the sky, we noticed that the 2 moons were of different sizes and colors. The larger one had a pale, bluish glow, while the smaller one was a bright red, almost blood-like color. Their light cast a surreal and ethereal glow over the landscape, illuminating the wilderness in an otherworldly manner. The air was different too. It felt thicker and heavier, almost as if we were breathing in a different mixture of gases. The scent of the surroundings was also unfamiliar, a mix of sweet and pungent odors, like a blend of exotic flowers and decaying vegetation. As we walked through the forest, we came across a stream, and in the moonlight, the water was a vibrant shade of purple. It was crystal clear, but we were hesitant to drink it, not knowing what kind of effect it might have on our bodies. Despite our initial apprehension, Kaylee and I were both in awe of this new world. Every step was an adventure, every sight and sound was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. We were filled with excitement and a sense of wonder at what lay ahead. We decided to set up camp near the stream, and once we finished setting up the tents, we could sit back and let it all sink in. There was an array of new sounds we'd never experienced before. Some were most likely creatures we had disturbed with our abrupt arrival. Kaylee was excited to start drawing them, while I was looking forward to cataloging them all. Journal entry number 2. May 5th, 2023. Kaylee and I woke up to the sound of birds chirping. We stepped out of our tent and were greeted by an incredible sight. The vegetation in this world is unlike anything we've ever seen. The trees tower over us, with twisted trunks and branches that seem to reach out like skeletal fingers. The leaves are a vibrant purple and red, and the bark is covered in a thick layer of moss. As we walked through the forest, we came across a clearing. In the center was a large flower with petals the size of our heads. The petals were a deep shade of blue with small glowing speckles. The center of the flower was a glowing orb that seemed to pulsate with a soft light. We were both in awe of its beauty and wondered if it had any medicinal properties. We made a note to come back and study it more closely. Journal entry number 3. May 6th, 2023. We encountered our first creature. It's a fascinating sight. It appears to be a cross between a bat and a lizard. The creature has a sleek black body, with large wings and sharp claws. It screeches when it flies, and we can hear it from far away. It's remarkable how quickly it moves. We believe it to be a predator, but we haven't seen it hunt yet. Kaylee has drawn a picture of it, and it looks just as frightening on paper as it does in real life. We'll set up camp near their hunting grounds to further examine them. We've been observing the creature for a few days now, and we've noticed some interesting behavior. It seems to be social, living in groups of 5 or 6. They're not aggressive towards us, but they're wary. We've watched them hunt, and they're incredibly efficient. They use their wings to swoop down on their prey, and then use their claws to tear it apart. It's not a pretty sight, but it's nature at work. We weren't very creative with the naming of this creature and simply settled with Vespertilio, a combination of the Latin word for bat, vespertilio, and lizard, lacerda. Description of the Vespertilio. The bat lizard is a fearsome creature, about the size of a large bat. Its body is sleek and black, with a wingspan of about 4 feet, 120 centimeters. It has sharp claws on its feet and a long, pointed tail. Its eyes are bright yellow, and it emits a piercing screech when it flies. Its diet consists of small animals, the New World equivalent of mice and birds, which it hunts with incredible speed and agility. The Vespertilio is social and lives in groups of 5 or 6. It's not aggressive towards humans, but it's wary. Its intelligence and hunting skills make it a formidable predator in this new world. Journal entry 4. Date, May 7, 2023. Today, we stumbled upon a field of flowers. The colors were so vibrant that they practically glowed in the sunlight. The petals were hard, almost metal-like. I immediately got to work cataloging them, and Kaylee started drawing. We found a few different types of flowers, all with unique shapes and colors. One type had petals that looked like stars, with a deep teal color. Another type had petals that were shaped like tiny bells and were a bright, sunny yellow. They even made the sounds. We took some samples and will bring them back home to study further. Journal entry 5. Date, May 9, 2023. Today, we found a new creature. It looked like a twisted metal deer, with 2 horns curling like a ram, but with an additional horn protruding from underneath its chin. It was standing in a river, and it was beautiful. Its scales were a metallic orange. We watched it for a while, and it seemed to be searching for something. Standing on its hind legs in the riverbed, hunched over digging. We're not sure what it was, but it was fascinating to observe. We cannot come up with a name for this one yet. I think I will let Kaylee decide this one on her own. Journal entry 6. Date, May 11, 2023. We discovered a tree today. It may not sound that interesting, but this one was special. It was unlike any tree we've ever seen. Its bark was a deep shade of indigo with yellow spots, and made of a soft, velvety material that was warm to the touch. The leaves were a bright, neon green, and they seemed to glow in the dark. We couldn't resist touching the bark. It was amazing. Kaylee has some wild ideas of how to incorporate the bark into dress designs. I cannot wait to see her first drafts. Journal entry 7. Date, May 13, 2023. As I left my tent to take some notes on some black resin that seemed to ooze out of the roots of a nearby bush, I noticed a new beast. I quietly signaled Kaylee to come see. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, a dragon of sorts. In front of us was this giant bird-like monster. It was roughly 20 feet or 6 meters, with a long neck similar to a giraffe or an ostrich. Its beak was wider than it was long, and it used it to pull off the leaves of the treetops. Its body was round, almost perfectly spherical with black and white feathers, although it had a top coat of iridescent feathers that were shimmering in the sunlight. It had 4 legs, each with razor-sharp claws, and a long, slender tail that ended in a pointed stinger. It had no eyes from what we could ascertain, and as of yet, we have no idea how it is able to perceive the world around it. Journal Entry 8. Date: May 15, 2023. After observing this strange bird-like creature, we decided to follow it to see where it was going. We followed it for hours as it wandered through the forest, occasionally stopping to pull leaves from the treetops and consume them with almost comically large gulps. There was even a noticeable bulge every time it swallowed, and we could see the bulge flowing down its neck. Eventually, it led us to a clearing where we discovered a group of these creatures gathered around a large tree. The tree was enormous, towering over everything around it. Its trunk was a deep shade of brown and was covered in intricate carvings that seemed to depict some sort of ancient story. The leaves of the tree were a deep shade of purple, and they radiated a gentle light that illuminated the entire clearing. As we approached, the creatures turned to look at us. They had no eyes that we could see, but seemed to be able to sense us through some other means. We were surprised to see that they were all wearing necklaces made of the same shimmering metal as the metal deer we had seen earlier. We're not sure what it all means, but it's clear that there's some sort of connection between these creatures and the metal deer. Kaylee, with her usual enthusiasm, started sketching the creatures and the tree. Personal note: are these creatures intelligent? Did they make the carvings? I am absolutely baffled by this one. I am unsure as to how a creature with no arms would be able to wield the tools necessary for carving or metalworking, or how they would have made the tools to begin with. Did they hunt one of those deers, or do the deer shed its scales naturally? Could the stinger-like tail be used as some sort of appendage? Maybe they are like the magpies of our world, simply adorning their bodies with shiny things. Or an even scarier thought: perhaps they belong to some sort of tribe. I was not able to understand the carvings. They seemed to only depict these bird creatures, and the tree seemed to have quite a significant role, as it was the centerpiece of the carvings. There seemed to be a lot of focus on the necklaces as well, as they were often the only colored part of the carvings. There were no depictions of the metal deer or any other creatures. I will need some time to think this one through. Date: May 17, 2023. After spending some time observing the creatures and the tree, we decided to try and communicate with them. Kaylee tried mimicking their sounds and gestures, but they seemed to be uninterested in us. However, one of the creatures did approach us, and to our surprise, it lowered its stinger-like tail and presented us with a necklace made of the same metal as the ones the creatures were wearing. We took this as a sign of goodwill, and we thanked the creature for the gift. We then decided to leave the clearing, not wanting to overstay our welcome. As we walked away, I couldn't help but wonder about the significance of the necklace. Could it be a symbol of some sort of alliance or friendship? Or maybe it's just a trinket to them, like a souvenir. We spent the rest of the day discussing the creature's behavior and the carvings on the tree. We still couldn't make sense of it all, but we were determined to figure it out. Kaylee suggested that we try to create a visual representation of the carvings to see if we could make any sense of it. I thought it was a great idea, and we spent the rest of the evening working on our sketches. In the end, we gave up trying to understand it. At the very least, we would be able to bring the sketches home and show our peers this wonderful discovery. Journal Entry 10. Date: May 20th, 2023. We stumbled upon a cave today, hidden deep within the forest. It was a strange cave, unlike any cave we've ever seen. The entrance was narrow, and we had to squeeze through one at a time. Once we got inside, we were greeted by a strange sight. The cave was lined with glowing crystals, illuminating the entire space with a soft blue light. The crystals were shaped like elongated diamonds, and they were embedded in the walls, floor, and ceiling, giving the cave a magical, ethereal feel. As we explored deeper into the cave, we noticed something strange. The crystals seemed to be growing, slowly but surely. It was almost as if the cave was alive, growing and changing before our very eyes. Kaylee was mesmerized by the beauty of the cave and immediately started sketching. I, on the other hand, was more curious about the nature of the crystals. Could they be used for anything? Were they valuable? Would they continue to grow? We decided to take some samples of the crystals back to our camp for further study. Perhaps they could be used for a new type of light source, or maybe even as a power source for our equipment. The possibilities were endless. Journal Entry 11. Date: May 21th, 2023. Today, we discovered something truly remarkable. We came across a clearing with a strange, glowing portal at its center. It was not the one we came, though, back when we entered this new world. The portal was framed in black bricks and seemed to be made of some sort of shimmering energy, and it radiated a warm and inviting light. We couldn't resist stepping closer to investigate. As we approached the portal, we noticed that there were strange symbols etched into the bricks. The symbols seemed to be some sort of ancient language, but we couldn't decipher them. We looked up at the portal and saw that it had started pulsating with energy, as if it was alive, almost breathing. Suddenly, a figure appeared through the light. It was humanoid in shape, but it had a metallic, almost robotic appearance. He, or rather it, was dressed in a robe of sorts. It stepped out of the portal and approached us, its glowing eyes fixed on us. The figure spoke to us in a language that we couldn't understand, but it seemed friendly, although a bit shady. It gestured for us to follow it through the portal, and we hesitated for a moment before deciding to take the risk. As soon as we stepped through the portal, we felt a rush of energy and a sense of weightlessness. We looked around and saw that we were in a vast, sprawling city made of metal and glass. The buildings were enormous, towering over us like skyscrapers. There were vehicles carrying cargo and spewing black smog up into an already polluted sky. It had this toxic light brown color. The figure led us through the city, showing us its wonders and marvels. We saw strange machines that seemed to defy the laws of physics, and we encountered other humanoid figures like the one that had led us here. They were not very friendly and seemed scared of us. As we delved deeper into the city, we discovered something that sent chills down our spines. There were areas of the city that were devoid of life, where the buildings were crumbling and covered in rust. In these areas, we found strange machines that seemed to be used for mining and drilling, tearing apart the land to extract resources. We soon realized that the city's inhabitants were exploiting this world for its resources, and the smog that choked the air was a result of their mining and industrial activities. We also discovered that the strange machines we had seen in the city were not machines at all, but rather living beings, genetically modified to serve the city's inhabitants. After around an hour of exploring the city, taking notes and sketches of everything we saw, the figure was stopped by what I can only assume to be some sort of security authority. A wheel of wires and metal, sparking and smoking as it conversed with our guide. It was difficult to understand the situation we were in when no one spoke our language. There was a lot of pointing and shouting, or rather screeching. like metal being dragged across concrete. Finally, a second security personnel showed up and led us back to the portal. It kept pushing us towards the portal while making that horrible sound. When we stepped back through, we felt the same rush of energy and weightlessness, and found ourselves back in the clearing where we had first encountered the portal. We noticed the light was gone, and the portal had been reduced to a simple stone frame. We were left in stunned silence as we tried to process what we had just experienced. What was that place? Who were those humanoid figures? Were they aliens? Perhaps a distant future? Journal entry 12. Date: June 5, 2023. After the encounter with the strange new portal and its inhabitants, we decided to head in the opposite direction. We wanted to explore more of this world and see what other wonders it had to offer. We walked for hours through dense forests and across open plains, and eventually, we stumbled upon a breathtaking sight. It was a crystal-clear lake that seemed to stretch on for miles. The water was so clear that we could see the fish swimming beneath the surface, and the sunlight shining through the water created a kaleidoscope of colors on the lake's bottom. We sat by the lake for a while, taking in the peaceful scenery while resting our tired feet. Suddenly, we heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. We got up cautiously, ready to defend ourselves if needed, but what we saw left us speechless. Emerging from the bushes was a creature that seemed to be made entirely out of crystal. It was a quadrupedal animal, with sharp, angular edges that seemed to catch the light and reflect it in every direction. Its eyes were large and glowed with a soft blue light, and as it approached us, we could see that it was completely transparent. The crystal creature seemed to be curious about us and came up to us, sniffing around and inspecting us closely. We didn't want to frighten it, so we remained still and allowed it to investigate us. After a few moments, it seemed to lose interest and walked away into the nearby woods. We had never seen anything like this creature before, and we were left wondering how it was able to exist. Was it a product of this world's unique environment? Was it a result of some sort of magical energy that permeated the land? We didn't know, but we knew that we had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. It has been about a month since we first arrived, and our notebooks are full of awe-inspiring creatures, plants, and rocks. I wonder how many things we've missed so far. This adventure is exciting, inspiring, and marvelous, but I am definitely getting homesick. It won't be long before we begin our journey home. Journal entry 13. Date: June 8, 2023. We continued our exploration of this fascinating world and came across a vast desert that stretched out before us as far as the eye could see. We could feel the heat radiating off the sand, and we knew that we needed to be cautious if we wanted to make it through unscathed. As we walked through the desert, we noticed strange rock formations that seemed to be growing out of the sand. They were tall and slender, with sharp edges that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. As we got closer, we realized that they were made of a material that we had never seen before. It was almost like a combination of metal and crystal. We approached one of the formations and ran our hands over its surface, marveling at its smoothness and hardness. Suddenly, we heard a rumbling sound coming from beneath the sand, and we quickly stepped back, unsure of what was happening. To our surprise, the rock formation began to move and shift, and we could see that it was actually a giant creature. It had a serpentine body with sharp, metallic scales, and its eyes glowed with a fiery intensity. It towered over us, and we could feel the heat emanating from its body. The creature seemed to be interested in us, but it didn't seem hostile. It made a rumbling noise that we took to be some sort of greeting, and then it began to slither away into the distance, disappearing into the shimmering heat of the desert. Journal entry 14. Date: June 9, 2023. Today, we came across an enormous canyon that seemed to stretch on for miles. The sides of the canyon were jagged and steep, and we could see that the rock formations were different colors, ranging from deep reds to vibrant greens. As we approached the canyon's edge, we noticed that there was a small stream running through the canyon floor. The water was crystal clear, and we could see fish swimming in the shallow water. We decided to follow the stream, hoping to see where it led. We walked for hours, with the canyon walls towering above us, and the sound of the rushing water echoing around us. Eventually, we came across a narrow section of the canyon that seemed to have been carved out by the water over time. We squeezed through the tight space, and on the other side, we found ourselves in a small, hidden valley. The valley was lush and green, with tall trees and wildflowers covering the ground. We could see a variety of animals grazing in the distance, and we decided to explore further. As we made our way deeper into the valley, we noticed that the air had grown cooler and fresher. We soon came across a small waterfall, with water cascading down into a tranquil pool. We took off our shoes and dipped our feet into the water, enjoying the refreshing coolness. As we sat by the waterfall, we noticed a group of strange creatures emerging from the trees. They were unlike anything we had ever seen before. They had long, slender bodies that seemed to undulate like waves as they moved, with iridescent scales that shimmered in the sunlight. They had 4 legs that ended in webbed feet, and long, elegant tails that trailed behind them. Their heads were elongated and tapered, with large, expressive eyes that seemed to change color depending on the angle of the light. They had small, sharp teeth that glistened in the sun, and long, delicate antennae that twitched as they sniffed the air. We watched in awe as the creatures grazed on the plants around us, completely unfazed by our presence. They moved with a grace and fluidity that was almost hypnotic, and we couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at their otherworldly beauty. We stayed by the waterfall for a while longer, watching the creatures as they went about their business. Eventually, they seemed to tire of us and made their way back into the trees, disappearing from sight. Journal entry 14. Date: June 10, 2023. After spending several weeks exploring this strange and wonderful world, it was time for us to return home. We had seen so many incredible sights and encountered so many fascinating creatures, but we knew that we couldn't stay here forever. We have begun our journey back, and I cannot wait to tell everyone what we have seen. Journal entry 15. Date: June 13, 2023. Today, we found ourselves in the midst of a massive storm. Dark clouds had gathered overhead, and lightning flashed across the sky. The wind howled and whipped around us, making it difficult to keep our footing. We sought shelter under a large tree, hoping to ride out the storm. As we huddled together, lightning struck the tree above us, and a loud crack echoed through the air. For a moment, we were both stunned and unable to move. The tree shook violently, and we could feel its roots being ripped out of the ground. We ran as fast as we could through the pounding rain, searching for a safe place to take cover. The wind was so strong that it was difficult to keep our eyes open, and the rain stung our faces like needles. We stumbled and fell several times, but we kept pushing forward, desperate to find shelter. After what seemed like hours of running, we finally spotted a small cave nestled in the side of a hill. It wasn't much, but it was better than being out in the open. We made our way inside and huddled together, trying to stay warm and dry. As the storm raged on outside, we sat in the cave and waited for it to pass. It was a humbling experience to be at the mercy of the elements like that. We were reminded of just how small and insignificant we were in the grand scheme of things. When the storm finally subsided, we stepped out of the cave and were greeted by a beautiful sight. The rain had cleared the air, and the sky was a brilliant shade of blue. The sun was setting in the distance, casting an orange glow over the landscape. Journal Entry 16. Date: June 15, 2023. After the storm passed, we continued our journey, making our way through a dense forest. The trees were tall and imposing, casting deep shadows on the forest floor. As we walked, we heard a strange sound, like a low rumble coming from the ground. Curiosity getting the better of us, we followed the sound until we came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a massive hole, stretching deep into the earth. The rumbling sound seemed to be coming from the hole, growing louder and more intense the closer we got to it. Suddenly, the ground beneath us gave way, and we found ourselves falling into the hole. We tumbled and bounced off the walls, our senses reeling as we hurtled down into the darkness. After what seemed like an eternity, we finally hit the bottom. Our bones ached, and our heads spun from the impact. We looked around, and to our amazement, we found ourselves in a vast underground cavern. The cavern was filled with strange formations, towering stalagmites and stalactites, and glowing crystals that illuminated the space with an ethereal light. The air was thick with a damp, musty smell, and we could hear the sound of running water echoing in the distance. As we made our way deeper into the cavern, we began to notice something odd. The rocks and walls around us seemed to be pulsating with a strange energy. It was as if the very earth was alive and breathing. Suddenly, we came across a massive chamber, and in the center of the room was a glowing stone that seemed to be the source of the energy we had been sensing. The stone was pulsating with a bright blue light, and as we approached it, we could feel a warmth spreading through our bodies. We reached out to touch the stone, and as soon as our fingers made contact, we were overwhelmed with a surge of energy. Our minds were filled with visions and sensations that we couldn't quite understand. When the visions finally subsided, we found ourselves back at the entrance to the cavern. We looked at each other in amazement, still trying to process what we had just experienced. We had stumbled upon something truly incredible, something that would change the way we saw this world forever. Journal Entry 17. Date: June 20th, 2023. After several days of travel, we finally found ourselves back in the clearing where we had first entered this world. To our relief, the portal was still there. We approached it cautiously, unsure if it would still work. As we got closer, the portal sprang to life once again, and we could feel its energy humming around us. We looked at each other, silently acknowledging the adventure and all of the amazing discoveries we had made. Taking a deep breath, we stepped through the portal and were engulfed in a bright light. When the light faded, we found ourselves standing in a familiar room. We had returned to our own world. We looked around, trying to process what had just happened. Had it all been a dream? But the notes and sketches we had made in the other world were real, and we knew that we had truly traveled to another realm. As we left the room, we felt a sense of awe and wonder at what we had experienced. We knew that we would never forget our incredible journey to the other world, and we couldn't wait to see what other adventures lay ahead. End of entry.